Live from Arlington, Virginia, this is Transport Topics Newsmakers, the digital interview series that gives you access to candid conversations between industry experts and a veteran reporter. Sponsored by Driver Reach. Here's your host, Dan Ronan.
Hello and welcome to this next edition of Newsmakers from Transport Topics. I'm Dan Ronan. Thank you for joining us. Our guest, Leah Shaver, is an industry expert and a leader when it comes to recruiting and keeping employees happy, along with discussion of salary and benefit issues. Before we begin our conversation with Leah, I want to tell you that Driver Reach is the sponsor for Newsmakers, and their leadership has a short message they'd like to convey to all of you. So let's watch the message, and we'll be back with Leah on the other side.
Are you frustrated with the challenge of attracting qualified CDL drivers? Are you managing that process with disconnected or outdated technology, or even worse, no technology? Get modern and go digital with Driver Reach, a modern driver recruiting, retention, and compliance management platform. Better recruiting begins with a better applicant experience. Our mobile-first DOT application makes it easier for drivers to apply and reduces the risk of abandonment. Then our intuitive user interface helps you manage everything that comes next. Improve your efficiency with automated previous employment verifications. With full CRM functionality, increase your engagement with applicants via email or text and enhance your ability to connect with our auto response technology. Streamline your onboarding process, create and send your own electronic documents with our robust e-signature solution, reducing the risk of being ghosted in orientation and dramatically improving your speed to hire. And with our CRM marketing functionality, you can nurture your growing database of applicants into a strong pipeline of future driver hires. Let's face it, when most drivers are looking for a new job, they apply to several different companies. Providing drivers with a better experience and leveraging technology to improve speed to hire will make the difference between a driver working for you or for someone else. Ready to see Driver Reach in action? Join us for a brief demo and start a free trial today. Now with Driver Reach, you can hire better, faster.
Now a bit about Leah and the company that she runs called the National Transportation Institute. Leah is a subject matter expert when it comes to company driver and owner-operator compensation history, the changes and benchmarks that we see in the industry. According to their website, NTI provides original economic research on company driver and owner-operator compensation history and changes to carriers, insurers, consultants, publishers, shippers, and nearly every equity analyst that follows the transportation industry. NTI's proprietary research is widely used as a tool for fleet executives to understand the direction and the velocity of Class A and Class B CDL markets with regards to wages and emerging pay strategies. Leah is also a member of the board of directors of Women in Trucking, where she chairs the organization's membership committee. And I'm proud to say she's also a colleague of mine, SiriusXM. She's one of the hosts on the Road Dog Trucking Channel 146. Leah, it's good to have you along with us, and welcome to Transport Topics Newsmakers. Thanks for taking time out of your busy day to join us.
I appreciate you having me, Dan, and it's good to see you beyond the mic at work on Sirius.
We do occasionally do this thing where I'm filling in for Mark Willis, and I will be handing off to you later in the afternoon if you're sitting in on the 4 o'clock show Eastern time. So we don't actually get a chance to see each other, but we do get a chance to talk to each other. It is nice to see in person.
It's a fun added opportunity.
It is indeed. Let's talk about salary compensation issues in the trucking industry. You know, we're almost a year now into the COVID-19 pandemic. We all know the things that have taken place in trucking with the sharp downturn that we saw in April and May and June, but things picked up pretty quickly. So where are we at right now with regards to hiring and retention in the trucking industry?
You're right. We really rallied quickly, didn't we? I'd call this 2018 with complications. We're faced with a ton of opportunity for growth, for profitability, and we are severely constrained by a dwindling driver supply.
How bad is it?
It's pretty tough. Early in the year, fleets reporting as much as a 40% year-over-year decline in folks onboarding at the company, filling new jobs that they have.
Are companies that you are talking with, are they turning back work because they don't have enough drivers to run their trucks?
I would say they're very choosy about the work that they do select, right? They're making really strong choices because they just can't all grow at the pace they'd like to. The most common number that our fleets report to us is that they could do 4 times the amount of work that's being offered to them if they simply had enough drivers.
4 times the amount of work. That's a staggering number.
It's a big number, especially, people was our greatest challenge before the pandemic. And that quickly changed with we went from record low unemployment to back to record high and, bounced back very quickly. And so it's a daunting challenge to face when you could grow and expand your offerings and your company and you are net short qualified driver supply.
Leah, I've written a lot about at ttnews.com, the problems that the Department of Motor Vehicles have had with regards to getting, people in for testing, for their CDL testing. And there's been the backlog in the training because of the fact that social distancing means that the instructors are limited in terms of what they can do in the cab or in the classroom. Are these factors complicating things as well?
One of a number of factors, but certainly the delays and issues bringing in new entrants is a severe problem. And honestly, Dan, that's going to be a problem for us, not just in the near future, but throughout the entire year of 2021 and into 2022.
Well, while we're dwelling on some of the problems right now, I want to talk about some of the things that are taking place that are positive. What are some of the really good and great companies doing to attract and retain drivers? If you had a checklist of things that you could tell an HR manager or a recruiting manager, what would be the things that you would say to them? Do you want to keep your great drivers, keep those men and women, because we all know that it's less expensive to retain people than to constantly have churn. What do you tell them?
Absolutely. In fact, you kind of walked right into that because we would tell them to recruit from the inside out.
Okay.
What I mean by that is to reflect your best programs inside the company, to continue to sell to the driver regularly why they chose you, why they stay, what you have available, remind them regularly, and they'll drown out the noise of all of the other folks that are also looking to get their attention. Reflecting your best program inside the company, benchmarking your programs regularly, and then pushing that out into the market is what we see from a lot of the best performers today.
It sounds like, to use a personal relationship, it sounds like some of the things that you have to do to keep a marriage going and keep things happy. You have to constantly be working at it to keep both sides in the relationship happy.
I'm only smiling, Dan, because I often say it's almost like dating, right? Think of your first date. You wore your best outfit. You put a lot of attention into how you looked, the impression that you were trying to make. You have to consider that how often you're pushing out that same reflection regularly throughout the driver's tenure with you. Just because they're in your seat, they're working for you, they're connected with you, doesn't mean they don't want to continue connecting with you. And as an example, your 401k enrollment might be at a certain period, let's say 90 days after you started with the company, or 6 months post day one. You still have to regularly encourage them. Let's say they didn't enroll at that time. Talking about it regularly, the benefits of retirement, contributions, how to enroll, how to increase the participation, et cetera. These are, it's just one example, but you can't just place an idea in someone's head and expect it to stay there forever. Much like your relationships, they need nurturing and regular ongoing care.
Do companies sometimes get sloppy and tend to overlook the fact that these are important things they need to be doing?
It's the top disconnect that we see is much of that first impression is made in the orientation room or in the paperwork supplied to onboarding drivers at the early stages of tenure, but continual reminders when they're in the hands of the rest of the company, aren't as often utilized. Remember that recruiting departments today aren't just an offshoot of, let's say, the human resources or the safety department. They're full sales and marketing teams. I mean, that's where we're at in trucking. We have a sales and marketing representative on the phone, behind the scenes, pushing out our digital images, maintaining our brand. This is a full-time pitch regularly, and that same external marketing plan as it pertains to recruiting needs to be brought internally in a retention plan.
You mentioned the issue of working from the inside out, and I wrote a story just the last couple of days about the big LTL carrier Yellow announcing that they were going to train more than 1,500 drivers, and not to single them out, but I'm using them as an example. That and one of the things they've said is that they want to try and get people who are with the company, existing employees. They've got about 30,000 employees that they would like to turn into drivers out of that group and take them through the driving academy that they've established. You think that's the best way to go?
Absolutely feel that all employees want to be able to realize growth opportunities. And another gap that we often see within a fleet is a lack of career path established for the rest of the company, not just the folks in the office. Just because we have a non-traditional career path in a truck and in trucking doesn't mean that the folks behind the wheel don't want to realize those same opportunities. So actually, we see examples of what you're suggesting in the opportunities at Yellow at many private fleets. Folks that have a lot of other jobs, they're not trucking companies. These are organizations that specialize in other areas. They happen to run their own fleet. And so where they see success is taking, as an example, warehouse workers, licensing them, paying for the CDL, paying for the training, and allowing them to see that as a growth opportunity.
You know, before I started covering the trucking industry several years ago, I spent a lot of time covering aviation. And one of the things I was always impressed by is that the aviation industry, for the most part, has very little turnover. Pilots sign on with Delta, American, Southwest, United, whatever the airline is. They sign on with them in their late 20s, early 30s in a lot of cases, and they're with them for 30 years in a lot of cases, 35 years till mandated retirement for pilots at 65. Trucking is a different industry, but why can't we get more of a model like that, that you're with a trucking company, whether it's a private fleet or an LTL or whatever it is, UPS, why can't we get something more along that model in the trucking industry?
I'll say it back to you. Why can't we? I think that we as an industry need to approach the career path and the opportunities within our companies and within the industry consistently. I think we rely on particular groups to segment the responsibility of an image campaign, if you will, to promote the industry, when in fact, altogether, we need to be shouting loud and proud how exciting it is. How much growth we've been able to realize at our companies and as an industry, how much technology is being deployed, how folks have been able to grow. I've been in trucking for 20 years. I've loved it. I've nurtured folks throughout that period that have also grown to love it. And I think if we're all consistent and headed in the same direction, we could be doing this industry-wide.
Leah, several major companies recently, including Walmart, have announced substantial bonuses for their new drivers, paid in a couple of installments, $5,000 when you sign on and $5,000 when you complete the training. Are bonuses the way to go in terms of attracting and retaining drivers, or is that a short-term solution to a major problem?
Yes.
Okay.
There are there are a lot of companies that utilize sign-on bonuses, and we'll be putting out a chart here shortly to our subscribers that talks about the increases in sign-on bonuses that have occurred over the last 6 months. We saw the same thing happen in 2018, and remember that I'm referring to this period right now that we're in as 2018 with complications. Sign-on bonuses are considered necessary by a lot of companies. We don't always agree. In fact, drivers on SiriusXM will tell you and me that they're skeptical of a company that has too large of a sign-on bonus, right? It makes them feel kind of suspicious about why the company would need such a substantial bonus, or it makes them look even more granularly at the pay and the benefits and the total offering, because they feel that maybe part of that has been carved away to put it towards the sign-on bonus. That said, though, remember that we have a dwindling driver supply. And when we went into this period, we were in a position where fleets had been they called it different things, but cleaning house, right sizing, et cetera. They had been, they found that hiring was a little easier. They could focus on more experienced, better qualified drivers and remove some of the lower performers at the bottom. It didn't take long of that closed pipeline, though, to come out of the pandemic period. I realize we're still in it, but the peak pandemic period, and reopen the pipeline to find that it's a bit too late. That said, if you're in a position where you have very high qualifications, and you mentioned a company that has high qualifications, higher needs, and they're in a position where they're not training a new entrant from the ground up. They need to recruit a well-qualified senior level driver away from a job. In that case, a sign-on bonus may be necessary. There are expenses to a driver to move companies. There are expenses and sacrifices that they make to get out of a truck altogether, travel to a new company, onboard, get acclimated. There's a bit of a down period in their early onboarding periods at the organization for the driver. So in those cases, some of those are supplemented with sign-on bonuses, and that makes sense to us.
There's been a lot of talk about how, because of the pandemic and really the great work that the trucking industry has done during this last year, that the image of the trucking industry has really gotten a shot in the arm. And is this something that you believe can be used to the industry's advantage when it comes to recruiting, especially going to underserved communities, whether it be women or minorities, to say to folks, hey, this is an industry that's vibrant. It provides a vital service to the country, and you need to look at this as a possibility of joining and being involved in it.
Remember, I feel that consistency is so key here as an industry. We all need to be proud of the work that our drivers are doing, and think of that shot in the arm that you mentioned related to COVID and our drivers, and most of us being trapped at home with low stock and supply at stores, and relying and knowing, validating what we've known all along, but for the rest of the country to know just how important and key driving really is as a necessity. We're recently reminded of that through the winter storm. Think of empty shelves, folks trapped at home without resources, and when they did come out of that, able to drive on roads that previously haven't been safe, they found no stock in the stores, because just as they weren't able to travel, our drivers weren't able to travel. These types of things, supporting the image of importance and also success of our professional drivers, are important to communicate regularly all the time, not just in our time of extreme need like we have recently.
Leah, besides the idea of bonuses, at least one company that I'm aware of, Nussbaum Transportation in Illinois, has taken a somewhat different tact. They've been providing their employees an ownership stake in the company. And is this another way of not only recruiting employees to say, when you come on and you can become vested in the company, but also in the retention? Because if you own a share of the company and it's going into your retirement account, that would probably make you more inclined to stick around.
Sure. What we admire about ESOPs at NTI is that they have the ability to really engage your entire team. They're all stakeholders in better performance, in safety and productivity, in the outcomes that you're looking for, those KPIs at the organization. The key here, though, is that the top benefit that fleets report lower participation in with their professional drivers is the retirement benefits. Many, not all, but many professional drivers get very acclimated over the years to living week to week. They're focused on those weekly earnings. And so the real challenge here for folks with an ESOP is how to communicate those deliverable benefits to both their current drivers and the potential drivers so that they see that long-term benefit and not just something that would be immediately appreciated each week in the paycheck.
Kind of back to the airline motto that we were talking about before. I heard a story from a pilot friend of mine that said the best piece of retirement advice that he ever got was from an airline pilot who said that, you should retire with the person that you were married to in the beginning, and that helps you along. And again, if you stick with a company for, in the case of, as we said, Nussbaum, for 25 or 30 years, when you leave the company and retire, you're likely to retire with a pretty big nest egg of money in the retirement account in addition to your own savings.
Absolutely.
I want to change topics a little bit in the remaining 10 or 12 minutes that we've got left, because this has been an area of quite a bit of discussion in the trucking industry. There's about 55 or 60,000 drivers in the last year who've been disqualified because of the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. And what's interesting about this is only about 15% of those drivers have applied for reinstatement and started to go through the process to be reinstated to get their CDLs back. How is this, in your view, impacting the driver shortage issue to take these 50 or 60,000 drivers out of the pipeline? We all want the industry to be safe. We don't want drivers who are abusing drugs or alcohol to be on the road, but it is impacting, to a certain extent, the driver shortage.
Absolutely, it is. Much like the implementation and examination of hair testing, certainly we are safer, right? And certainly it's necessary. One thing to keep in mind is that, like hair testing, there's potential drivers that would completely self-select themselves out, meaning they're not going to change jobs or even work at another company, enter into the industry because of that clearinghouse. When you add to that the growing number of states where marijuana is legal, consider how that item would also deter those younger potential drivers from even considering professional driving as a career. So habitual users aren't even going to consider a regulated job. I think when you combine the self-selecting, the positives, and the idea that they might requalify and re-enter, I can't even think of a handful of companies where they could do that, unfortunately. And then you add the self-selecting out of even folks that might consider the industry because they are regular users. It is impacting our entire pipeline.
Leah, one of the things that I've been wondering about and wanted to get your opinion on this concerns something that has been happening in high schools and also in families across the country. And as the parent of someone who is a high school junior, I'm guilty of this myself. It seems as though we have really told our young people that the quickest way to success in society after graduating from high school is to go to a state university, do the 4-year program, and then start your business career in your early to mid 20s, 23, 24, 25, however your age is when you graduate. But we've really passed over the skilled trades and also the trucking industry and industries like that. What can we do as a society, and as a parent myself, as I said, I'm guilty of this to a certain degree, to convince people that, yes, there are good, really strong, viable careers that may not require a full 4-year degree, but you can start out making a very, very respectable salary, $60,000, $70,000 a year to start, and be virtually debt-free if you go that route and be on your way.
Um, I'll answer, as a society, there's a new association, Dan, I don't know if you've heard of them, Next Gen Truckers, and we're providing them some information, going to get more involved when they get fully up and running. But their goal is to get more simulators in high schools, more programs in high schools where we can do some of the entry-level work at the high school level, and when they graduate from high school, go right into a school, a licensing program, et cetera, to get right into trucking. Now, remember that we have an age issue. There's a law that says that we can't operate in interstate commerce until the age of 21. When you add to that, we've got a lot of risk and insurance concerns in the industry in general. And there are many of us, myself included, that would say, at our experience, the new entrants give a lot more care to what they're doing, and are more so in those smaller, more frequent type incidents than they are in the severe accidents. But we've got to do more work there. That said, as an industry, remember that we need to consistently promote the image of what we do and how great it is, and most importantly, how necessary it is, very consistently. And we have to start it at a young age. 20 years ago, when I started as a recruiter, driving was a generational job. Drivers would tell me when I asked why they chose us or this industry, it was a goal from childhood, started young. And today, our own drivers say they wouldn't encourage their kids to enter into this job. So certainly, we've got folks that are doing the job today that started on the farm. They were raised to be drivers, or their parent was a driver. But we need to see drivers as they are going to look now and in the future, not just as the middle-aged white male, right, in the button-down shirt. They don't all look like that today. And we're trying to attract more of folks that don't just have that traditional image. Women, minorities, we're trying to coach younger folks that they have opportunity here. How will they know that if they don't see it from the start at a young age? So as an example, I worked at a fleet, and we had some hesitance about going into a high school job fair because that audience wouldn't be a driver until age 21. Well, if we don't plant the seed early, they're not going to consider it, just like you said. And then lastly, when we talk about starting them young, at Women in Trucking, we have a Girl Scout patch. We have all the materials to help support your planning of an event. We have an activity book that tells the story of harvesting the grain in the field, to making the cookies in the factory, to delivering the boxes that you're seeing right now in your community, outside the grocery stores, through your friends, saying my kids are selling Girl Scout cookies right now on Facebook. As an industry, let's come together, promote what we love to our kids, our community, and even in those programs, so that we can plant the seed of opportunity early.
And so, as I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, and you just mentioned a moment ago, you're a member of the board of directors of Women in Trucking, a great program that Ellen and her team have done such a wonderful job about. So what can we do to attract more women into the industry? I mean, it's 7-8%. It needs to be much higher, and that's a tremendous pool of talent that's out there that just seems to be sitting there.
And it's also a group that typically enters the industry at a later age. So how do we do a better job? I love the question. I appreciate the opportunity to answer it. We coach at NTI. You need to reflect what you admire, and in turn, you'll attract what you're reflecting. So if you're only reflecting in your ad campaigns, in the images of your company, in how you want to be portrayed, that top 10% in your fleet, which might have been with you a long time, which might be that standard, typical view of an American truck driver, the over 50 white male, when in fact you're looking to attract minorities and women and younger folks, then you need to reflect that in all of your marketing, in your company's performance, in the management at your company. The folks with the highest percentages of women in their fleets in the WIT index create and nurture communities of women, of minorities. Women want to mentor and be mentored. They want to collaborate and connect with other people. Folks know now that women want to be independent. That's why they're getting into this job later in life. So support entrepreneurship, health and wellness, training for leadership that elevates your driving force. All of these are seen as successes in the folks that report the highest percentages of women to NTI. Our standing.
The industry has spent a lot of time focusing on attracting and recruiting men and women who are separating from the military. Do you think that it's been as successful as it could have been in terms of getting ex-military into the trucking industry?
Thank you. We don't see as many companies that really thrive in this because it's not done across the board. However, there are a lot of veterans that are working in the industry that were here in our midst already. Are we successfully now transitioning folks right out of the military, right into a truck? Sure, it's being done, but we don't see it widespread. And much like the other groups that we're trying to tap into, it's not just veterans, but again, women, minorities, younger drivers. What we see the problem as is that it's just not consistent across the board.
And one other thing too, for several years now, and especially because of COVID and e-commerce, there's been a movement away from the traditional over-the-road trucking. We hear stories about how the average number of miles that a driver is driving every day is dropping. And we see more regional operations with Amazon, FedEx, UPS, regional delivery. Some of those vehicles, the Sprinter vans, don't require you to have a CDL to drive. You can drive on a regular driver's license. Is this a way to attract more people into the industry if they have success as a delivery van driver for one of the Sprinter companies, that maybe we get them into the traditional trucking industry at a later age when they get a little bit older and a little bit of experience?
Absolutely. We feel if you have opportunities at your company, both in non-CDL roles and in CDL roles, that's a great opportunity to elevate your driver force, right? And to create a career path for people. Not everybody has that opportunity though, unfortunately. What does help retain drivers, among many other things, is transparency in the pay and schedule. And so if by fewer miles we anticipate expected home time and secure pay, then sure, you're going to be more successful in retaining. But in the short term, many fleets haven't communicated the trend overall of fewer miles to their drivers. And so if we have experienced long-term drivers chasing miles and productivity, and then we have below median payers still really encouraging their fleet that if you want to earn more, you simply have to do more, you're going to see this widespread gap of folks on either end. We recommend as much as you can to look inside the fleet. What can you do internally? Remember, you're going to push out your best programs from the inside out rather than introducing your best programs as ways to attract new drivers.
Leah, it's been a fascinating conversation. I want to give our viewers an opportunity to find out more information about you and about NTI. If they're interested, where can they go on social media to find your information and how to reach out to you?
Sure. Our website is driverwages.com. I'm on LinkedIn at Leah B. Shaver. Facebook, related to the work I do on SiriusXM, is at Leah Shaver SiriusXM. We're out there.
And you're on SiriusXM quite a bit as well, so they can always call you at 1-888-876-2336.
That's right. Tune in the afternoons every once in a while on Road Dog Live. And of course, you can catch shows that I've hosted on demand on the app.
Absolutely. In closing, we want to thank our sponsor for this broadcast, Driver Reach, for making this edition of Newsmakers possible. We also want to thank our good friend Leah Shaver for answering our questions. Going forward, we're planning more Newsmakers in the very near future with very high-profile guests such as Leah. We at ttnews.com know that these will be great programs, and we're very excited about the coming webcast. This webcast will be available for viewing on demand. Go to ttnews.com for more information. Again, we thank Leah Shaver. I'm Dan Ronan, ttnews.com. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for joining us today. For more information on future episodes, visit ttnews.com. This has been Transport Topics Newsmakers.